सेव किया था ना?
मैं सिर्फ इसलिए गया था क्योंकि उसने मुझे कॉल किया, that's it. But listen तो.
Save it for someone else.
जिंदगी में सेव करना जरूरी है, मगर जब बात पैसों की हो, सिर्फ सेविंग से काम नहीं चलेगा। इक्विटी म्यूचुअल फंड्स में इन्वेस्ट कीजिए और अपने सेविंग्स को आगे बढ़ने का मौका दीजिए।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
After a long time here at Macro Sutra, we're going to come back to inflation. And we can't help it with tomato prices as they are more than 100 rupees a kg across the country. We have to talk about inflation, especially because when you look at the inflation numbers, they've actually been coming down. So how is it that several food items are seeing their prices going up while inflation is coming down? That's what we're going to discuss in this episode of Macro Sutra. I'm TCA Sharad Raghavan, Deputy Editor at ThePrint, and we have with us, as always, Radhika Pandey, Associate Professor at NIPFP. Thank you so much, Radhika.
Thank you, Sharad.
So now, Radhika, as I said, on the one hand, you have the government estimates of inflation, and on the other hand, you have the mandi prices, the prices that we actually pay. So first, let's look at the inflation, how that's been moving. And as we know, within inflation, there are various components. So how has food inflation been moving the last few months?
Yeah, so in the last few months, we've seen that inflation has started to moderate. So we saw, particularly from April onwards, we have seen a steep decline in inflation, and it's also it's a broad-based decline. It's driven by decline in food inflation. Food inflation has also come down. As per the latest estimates, food inflation is even below 4%. So that's a welcome development. So on food inflation front, particularly we were worried when we did the previous episode because the wheat prices were rising. But now we see that wheat prices have corrected. There is a moderation because of increase in the supply of wheat. But then now we are seeing fresh triggers to food inflation, and they might show up in the CPI official estimates for the next month, or they might not show up, because when you're talking about CPI food inflation, there are, as you mentioned, we have various components. We have cereals, we have fruits and vegetables, we have egg, fish, meat, we have oils and fats. So what we are now seeing is that there are some individual items which have recently seen a spurt in prices, and it's worthwhile to discuss the price movements in these and whether they can pose a fresh challenge to the food inflation outlook of the country, and therefore to the wholesale and the retail overall headline inflation.
But overall, food inflation has been coming down.
Food inflation has been coming down. Now we have to see what happens in June. Because right now we have the data till the official CPI estimates are till May. And now we'll have the June number will come out on the 12th of July. But we do have a number of high frequency indicators to give us a sense of where the direction of the various food articles may be moving. So we have retail prices indicators, we have mandi prices, which are the wholesale prices, which do tell us that there are price pressures building up in some quarters.
Right. So then let us come to those actual prices, the prices that we pay, and at the mandi, at the retail level.
Yes.
But you also feel that, is it only tomatoes, or are we seeing it in other food items as well?
Yeah, so let's look at a very important database which is released by the Ministry of Agriculture. It's the database of 21 essential commodities. So the price monitoring division under the Ministry of Agriculture, so Department of Consumer Affairs, monitors this prices of 21 essential commodities, which include wheat, rice, tomato, onion, potatoes, some oils like mustard oil, and then various other food items. So it's 21 commodities which are part of our food basket as well, which is an important part of our food basket. So there we can look at these items to get some early indications about what we will get in the CPI food inflation. So it's very important to see that, in terms of coverage, it is capturing more than half of CPI food. Okay, so in CPI food, there are around 114 items, but these are only 21 items, but still in terms of their weights, they are capturing more than 50%
Okay.
of the CPI food. So if we look at these items, if we do a visual inspection of these 21 commodities, and it's a daily price data, we see that tomato has seen a very sharp surge in a matter of a week. In a
Right.
matter of a week, we have seen prices doubling. And if you look at the retail prices, actually, if you go to the market, it's above 100, as you rightly pointed out. But here we are still seeing around rupees 60, 65 per kg.
Oh.
And from an increase from 30 to 65
I see.
in a week's time, because they do a lot of averaging. It's an average of across the various markets.
But it shows the trend. It's a
It
near
shows the
doubling,
trend.
or it's
Yeah.
more than a doubling in
Absolutely.
a week.
Yes, in a week. So that
Wow.
is very, very telling, that it shows a very steep increase in a matter of 7 days. So that is tomato. But if and because the price of tomato has risen so exorbitantly, we are not able to see the price rise in some of the other commodities. But when you see all these 21 commodities together in one frame, you can see that actually onion prices have also risen.
Oh.
Potato prices have also risen. So
I
we
see.
call this top. Tomato, onion, and potato.
Potato,
So
right.
we have seen elevated prices in all the three, and we know these are the staple food items, and we've seen an increase in all the three. So these are definitely one chunk of drivers, and the other is in pulses. In pulses, we are seeing two pulses, urad and tur dal, which have seen again a very sharp surge in prices. Again, in the last few weeks, we have seen an increase.
Right. So now, of course, I mean, a lot of the news has been about tomato prices.
Right. Yeah.
But as you say, it's also potato and onion. But
Yeah.
since the news is about tomato,
Yes.
let's first dive into that.
Yes.
What exactly has been happening with tomato? Is it seasonal? Has this spike been happening the same time last year as well?
Yes, so it has been happening, and again, if we look at, very instructive is to look at the mandi prices.
Right.
Now it's again a very important database which is released by AgMark, which is called the AgMark Net. It's a portal of daily prices of mandis across all districts of all states
I see.
of all varieties of commodities.
This is a government body?
Yes, a government body.
Okay.
It's under Ministry of Agriculture. So they've started releasing this data. It's a very valuable database to look at whichever market, whichever district you want to study. It gives you the daily prices of all commodities, and it also shows a comparison with the previous month and the corresponding month of the last year. So we did this exercise for the month of June for tomato, because our interest is in tomato. We look at the average price of tomatoes across various mandis in each state,
Right.
and we see that all states have seen a increase in prices, mandi prices from May to June.
Okay.
But again, if we want to just see where the increase has been more prominent, we see that states like Maharashtra, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, these are the states which have seen a very sharp increase in the mandi prices, almost more than 100%, 120%,
Wow.
130% from May to June 2023.
Right.
The other important point is that if we still compare these prices, so our latest is June 27. So as per June 27, if we compare with June of last year, the prices are still lower than the prices in June 2022.
Wow. So last year there was an even bigger spike.
Yes. So
Oh.
that is why, again, if we look at year-on-year change, you might get a negative number.
Right.
Because the prices in June 2022 were even more than this time around. So that's a very interesting feature of the data that we are seeing. But now coming to the factors, one is of course the heat wave that we saw during March and April. And then the other thing is that, it's a highly perishable commodity, and at the time of transport, if there are unseasonal rains, unpredictable rain, cyclonic activity, this time
Right.
we saw a cyclone, so that impacted the transportation. So the transportation could not happen timely, and that also affected the supply and increase in prices. Now, tomato is, again, if we look at it is a part of Rabi crop also and Kharif crop also. Right now it is Rabi crop which is coming from Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh and Maharashtra. And it's still from March till August we will have this crop. From August onward we'll have the Kharif crop which is in UP and Nasik in Maharashtra. So we normally, if we just, what we've done is also try to track the prices across different years.
Right.
And there what we see is that there is no distinct seasonal pattern. But what we do see is that there's always this volatility around this time. So around May, June till August, there are this spikes which are seen across different years, and they tend to become more modest after September.
Okay, so and you mentioned that transport is an issue, and now we have actually several questions relating to that from the audience, and they have to do with our cold chain infrastructure.
Right.
So now one of the questions is, do we still have cold storage problems? Whenever we have more production, the farmers dump their produce on the roads as they don't get good prices. And the reverse is also true, that when there's a shortage, the government starts importing and then floods the market. So how can we prevent these sorts of things and ensure that the farmers get a realistic price for their produce?
Yeah, so rightly pointed out, it is still a problem in the sense that the cold chain infrastructure is not developed holistically across various parts of the country. There are some success examples, there are some success stories like in UP, for some crops, like for potato, there we do have cold storage facilities, but the same kind of infrastructure is not there across all states. So that is definitely a problem. And the other problem is that, most of the farmers are small and marginal farmers. So whether they are able to afford the cold storage infrastructure, and now with the kind of climate change we are facing, the technology of the cold storage infrastructure also needs to undergo a change and needs to be upgraded. So there are a lot of discussions around this issue, but yes, this needs to be addressed along with various other issues around agricultural infrastructure, forward market linkages, markets and all.
Right.
This is definitely an issue which needs to be addressed, but steps are already being taken, and we do have some examples, but it's not a very holistically developed infrastructure.
It's not widespread yet.
Yes.
So now another question is talking about some of these success stories. They say that the Kerala government has MSP for vegetables, and the Goa government also has a horticulture support program which it buys veggies and then hires cold storage facilities, and thus has been effective in controlling prices even though there is no MSP. So do we have some sort of way to measure whether this has been successful there?
So for Kerala, as the question says, it's about the MSP for vegetables, and it was introduced during 2020, and the coverage has been increasing. The items that are part of this MSP program for vegetables and fruits, they have widened this coverage, but there are some problems which are being, though it is helping some kind of price support, but there are some issues in the implementation of this program.
Okay.
One is that some of the farmers have taken this with a pinch of salt because they are not getting the prices at they are not getting the payment at regular intervals, at regular time period. And also for the people who are procuring, the state agencies, the marketing agencies that are procuring, they are in a kind of a dilemma. Because if you keep encouraging production of certain fruits and vegetables by offering higher MSP, then there is going to be a glut. They are going to keep procuring these fruits and vegetables, and since these are perishable, the demand also needs to be seen. So there is a problem with the incentive structure of these schemes, whether just providing assured returns in the form of MSP and then procuring, is that the only way to fix the price support issue, or we should widen the market, have more players in the market, have more processors, have the people who are say involved in making tomato sauces and all those who are able to procure. So is that system better, or this system where you are incentivizing farmers to keep growing a particular
Yeah.
kind of crop, because you are increasing the MSP, even though it might not be linked to the market prices. So that is something which is the concern expressed by the procuring agencies.
Right.
Because for wheat and rice, it is okay, it is not perishable, and we have the PDS system. But for fruits and vegetables, it is a problem. And the second thing is also that you have fruits and vegetables coming from other states as well.
Right.
And if they are coming at a more cheaper price, then it becomes difficult for the procuring agencies to offload in the open market. So
Correct.
there are couple of problems with these measures, particularly with regards to the MSP for fruits and vegetables, and it needs to be supplemented with the other more important measures like the market support measures.
Right. And now coming back to something that you mentioned, you said that inflation, these rise in prices, it's not just the top vegetables, but it's also pulses and even milk.
Milk, yes, milk.
So are those seasonal factors? Why is there inflation, rise in price happening there? In milk
so in milk, again, it's a confluence of a number of factors, and it can be traced back to the COVID time. Because during COVID time, because of the stringent lockdown, there was a sharp slump in the demand for milk.
Right.
So there were no marriages happening, there were no parties, so there was no massive demand for milk. So the milk producers were not able to adequately feed their cattle because they did not get adequate remuneration. They were not able to feed their cattle, which is now getting impacted now because the milk yield has now fallen because they did not get adequate nutrition at
fodder
that time.
prices also up.
Yeah,
right?
so that is one. The other is, again, the cost of production has risen in the aftermath of the Russia-Ukraine war. We have seen maize, corn, all the important cereals that go into the making of the feed fodder, that has been impacted, and that has resulted in increase in prices. Labor cost has increased, transportation cost has increased. So it's primarily, it has to do with the cost of production on various fronts, the feed cost, fodder, labor, transportation, and now coupled with lower yield. So those are the factors that are responsible. And this is something which has been flagged by the RBI also in their monetary policy statement of June, where they say that one of the headwinds, one of the upside risks to inflation is coming from milk prices.
From milk prices. And on pulses?
On pulses also, again, in pulses, we see that there are two dals, tur dal and urad, we are seeing increase in prices. And there, again, it has to do with a number of factors, though government has started taking measures because, this is happening for the last 2-3 months. So now government has introduced stock limit. That how much any miller or wholesaler or retailer can keep. So that is one measure. They have also started to procure. What was happening is that farmers feel there is no adequate incentive for sowing pulses.
I see, because there's not enough procurement happening.
There's not enough procurement happening. So that is something, there is an incentive problem with the pulses, particularly with tur dal, because tur dal is, firstly, it is difficult to sow. It has some, the prices can be very volatile. So farmers are discouraged to increase the sowing of this dal. But if you look at the consumption pattern, this is one of the massively consumed dals, particularly in the UP, Bihar side, we see that it is consumed, but it has to do with the incentive structure, and therefore now recently the government has removed the procurement cap. Earlier there was a cap that the government will not procure more than 40%. Now the government is saying that they will procure more. So that will give kind of incentive to farmers to sow more of these dals. So that is definitely a problem. Overall, our production of pulses is good, but these two dals are problematic, and these need to be monitored across all states. And we are seeing a number of measures that the government is taking. Some of the measures may not be good in the long run, like if imposing stock limits and invocation of Essential Commodities Act.
Right.
So there are debatable, but the fact is that incentives need to be addressed, need to be fixed. Incentive structure needs to be improved to boost the production of these pulses.
Right. And now, speaking of steps that the government can take or is trying to take, we have several questions, of course, to do with the farm laws. And now the questions are whether these farm laws would have helped in getting these farmers the price that, that they're due. And another question has to do with, instead of doing a nationwide rollout of the farm laws, can we do it in specific areas which were more receptive? Like, say, for example, one of the questions mentions Maharashtra, which was more receptive to the farm laws and didn't have so much pushback.
Right.
So can it be done like that?
Yes, see, one important lesson that was learned from the farm laws was that adequate stakeholder consultation is important.
Right.
Awareness is important. People need to be informed in their local language, the importance of these farm laws, the advantages of these farm laws. Somehow that was missed, and that is why there was so much of pushback on these reforms. But in principle, these reforms do have the potential of increasing the farm income. If we look at, there's a difference between increasing the farm output and increasing the farmer's income.
Right.
So if we want to increase farm output, yes, the farm output is increasing. We look at the Ministry of Agriculture estimates, the agricultural output is improving. But whether it is getting translated into improving farmers' income, those require more holistic steps, which require improving developing the market. Agricultural markets need to be developed, and that was the essence of the farm laws, that you develop the markets and not just rely on procurement. But there was this concern that government is stepping back from providing a minimum support price. So if these measures are implemented, and of course, these measures are already in place in some of the states.
Absolutely.
They are in place in some of the states in varying degrees, and in some states they are playing a role in improving the farmers' income. We have these players. We have measures to strengthen the forward and backward linkages, improving the interaction between the processors and the producers. But yes, so it's good that in some states it needs to be taken more intensively, these measures. But these are not the only thing. Like, we've talked about that as of now, it's due to climate change. So El Nino is an impact which is impacting all the crops, not just tomato. In tomatoes, it has been compounded because of its perishability, but it is impacting food inflation in general.
Absolutely.
So these reforms will definitely help in supporting, particularly when there is a supply glut and we don't have measures to support the prices. So we need to have adequate buyers in the market. We need to strengthen the markets, and that is why these the essence of these farm laws was in that direction.
Right. And now I have a final question for you, which is a little bit out there, but it's very interesting because it has to do with artificial intelligence. And so the person asks, today we're talking about artificial intelligence, and yet we don't have advanced enough technology to predict the weather well enough so that we can inform farmers well in advance so that they can even sow their crops in accordance with what we can predict the weather is going to be like. So has the technological benefit reached the farmers and across India, or has it not? But overall, we're very far away from predicting weather so far in advance.
Yeah,
right?
So AI definitely has this potential, but as of now, it is in a very nascent stage, and it needs to be tested for a number of use cases before we can actually rely on this for an important area like weather forecasting, and that too for a very longer term horizon.
Right.
As of now, our forecasts even fall haywire even for short duration. So we need to remember at this time there is this underlying problem of climate change. There is this problem of temperatures rising. We are talking about global warming, temperatures rising above 1.5 degrees. So this is a global worldwide phenomenon impacting all crops across. So it is time we start addressing and start talking about addressing that problem.
Right.
Because even if we know, even in the hypothetical case that the AI becomes that useful that we know, we will not be able to do much about it, because it's not just tomato or potato being impacted. It's most of the crops will be impacted, wheat will be impacted, there will be shriveling of the crops. So it has to do with addressing the core fundamental problem, and also acknowledging that this is happening due to El Nino, this is happening due to untimely cyclonic activity that we are seeing.
Right.
And that is what even the RBI, though prices, the inflation has fallen, but still we are very cautious about what's going to happen in the next few months because of the impact of El Nino.
Absolutely.
So the core fundamental issue needs to be known and it needs to be acknowledged.
Right. And so now that's what we have. We have a lot of staples that we use in our kitchen getting more expensive. You have tomatoes, you have potatoes, onions getting more expensive, milk is getting more expensive, some kinds of pulses are getting more expensive. Now, inflation so far has been coming down, but there is a chance that these rising prices in these commodities might impact food inflation in the next month. But it also might not, because these are also only a few commodities in overall inflation. Inflation measures, prices across the economy. The reasons for this are varied. Some of them are seasonal. Some of them have to do with the weather conditions this particular year. A lot of it has to do with the fact that we don't have proper cold storage, because these are all perishable goods that we're talking about. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done to bring some sort of price stability in vegetables in India. So that's what we have for you, and thank you so much for watching. But before you go, I have an appeal to make before you, which is please do subscribe to The Print. It enables us to do a lot of the good work that we're doing. For example, it allows us to send reporter after reporter to places like Manipur. We've now sent 4 reporters to Manipur to bring you the news from there, what's happening, to bring you in-depth coverage. And it also allows us to do the kind of shows that we're doing. But apart from that, it gets you several benefits. It gets you priority passes to these exclusive webinars that we do with experts. It allows you to write into us and we publish it as an article in the Your Turn section. And it gives you access to the exclusive the exclusive newsletters that we send out to our members, written by our editors. So there are a lot of benefits for you as well to subscribe. Please do. The link is in the description of this video. And thank you so much for watching.